And I just want to say what an honor it is for me to have my good friend Pastor Mike with us today. He is a friend that started as a guy that I was like, hey, how do I do this church planting thing? And asked him a lot of questions, and then got to hang out with him and became friends. And he's been a mentor in my life for the last several years. And I know God's gonna bless the word today. And I want to let you know he pastors a church in Raleigh, North Carolina. They have multiple campuses. They see thousands every single week, and it's incredible. God has done. He'll tell some of his story. But what I love about Pastor Mike is not just that he's a great preacher, not just he's a great strategist and leader, but that he's a man of God that follows the word of the Spirit. He listens to what the Spirit is saying. He's sensitive to that. And I know today you're going to be blessed by his ministry, and he's my friend. And so what I want you know what I do when I got my friends in the house. I want you to stand on your feet with me all across this room and welcome to the stage, Pastor Mike Santiago.
Come on, let's give Jesus some praise. Come on, if he's been good to you, if he woke you up this morning, amen. You may be seated. My dad used to sell fireworks. You know those little fireworks tents that show up in front of the Kroger and Walmart during 4th of July, New Year's Eve? They're kind of sketchy a little bit, you know. They get cheaper as you get closer to 4th of July. They get cheaper as you get close to New Year's Eve. Well, my dad was the regional manager of all of the tents in Florida. So he would go, and we, you know, at 9 years old, I'm waddling behind him. He's the regional manager. I am assistant to the regional manager. And we would make sure that they didn't put the tent too close to a gas station where there was fuel so that it wouldn't explode if somebody tried lighting one off near the tent. And he would make sure there was fire extinguishers close by. And if somebody had poked their finger through the plastic of some of the bundles that they sell at these sketchy tents but left a few, well, we got to keep those. So as you can imagine, leading up to Independence Day, our house was the most independent house on the block, okay? We had 4th of July fireworks, 5th of July, 6th of July. We had Mother's Day fireworks. We had Father's Day fireworks. We had Cinco de Mayo fireworks, Christmas Eve fireworks, Christmas Day fireworks, Thanksgiving fireworks. We had thousands of dollars of explosives at our disposal at all times. It was a bad day to be a mailbox in our neighborhood. And this is back when kids played outside. I don't know if you remember this or not, but we used to play outside. You remember that? Our parents would kick us out of the house until the street lights came on. We would drink from the side of the house in this thing called a hose. Do you remember this? And we're immune to everything that they try to throw at us because we played outside. Come on, somebody. We rode these things called bikes. You remember a bicycle? Yeah, you could clap for that. Bring it back. The green electrical box, you know. We would meet at the green electrical box, and all of my friends would come over to the house, and I'd open up the garage, and it was like peeking into the Ark of the Covenant. It was like getting a glimpse of God's glory. It was the Shekinah glory, the balm of Gilead. It was like, oh! And they would say, where did you get all these fireworks? How did you get access to so much explosives? This is amazing. This is $3,000, $4,000 of free fireworks. How did you get access to such great explosives? And because I was so used to being around it, it was kind of standard to me, but special to the outsider. Because I was so accustomed to being in the industry, it was novel to the outsider, but it had become normal to me. And I want to let you know that what God is doing at Awaken Church is not normal. It is very special, and we need to thank God, even though you get it every Sunday, for our pastors who sacrifice. Come on, you can do better than that. Don't get used to the fireworks. Just because you get to hear the word of God every single Sunday, just because you get to get into the presence of God every single Sunday, don't just shrug your shoulders, but instead thank God every chance you get. Church planting is not easy. They started this church from scratch. Their family has sacrificed so much, and it's important that you realize that what Pastor Tyler and his family have done is extremely uncommon. To dishonor is to belittle or to degrade, but it's also to treat something that is uncommon as though it is common. And so we cannot treat the grace that's on this place as common. And one more time, can we thank God for Pastor Tyler, Kayla, his family? Thank you so much. You're doing a good job. Keep your head held high. I remember I played t-ball as a kid, and if I got on base, my dad would be in the stands. And before he got ejected, obviously, We're talking to the umps, and he would say something like, "Whose boy is that?" When I ever got on base, he'd say, "Whose son is that?" Knowing that I could hear him say that. And I would just say that God says that to you today. Whose son is that? He's very proud of you, and you're doing a good job. Don't just wait for October, Pastor Appreciation Month, to honor your pastor. Every chance you get to celebrate them and to thank them and to text them words of encouragement, it means a lot. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, and ministry is lonely. And so thank you for sticking it out. And what you've done here is quite remarkable. What the Lord has done is quite remarkable. My name is Mike. If we didn't have a chance to meet yet, my wife Ashton and I think they have a picture. If you ever see me at a Coldplay concert, this is who I'll be with. Come on, somebody. When I was 14 years old at a Sunday night service at Suncoast Cathedral Assemblies of God, she walked in a sea of purple pews. It was like there was a spotlight on her, and I looked over to my youth pastor, and I said, "Pastor Dan, I don't know who that is, but I'm going to marry that girl." And he said, "You don't even know her name." And I'm like, "But I'm a prophet to the nation, so I prophesy." Sure enough, I got her number from a friend because I was too shy to get it from her myself. And we got married a couple years later. One of the promises that I made to her father when I asked for her hand in marriage, he said, "Would you mind not having any children within the first 5 years so that you can get yourselves established?" We were very young, and we needed some time to kind of grow into our adulthood. And so his ask of me was, "Please don't have any children within the first 5 years." And I said, "No problem at all. We're very young. We won't have any kids within the first 5 years." We had all 3 of our kids within the first 4 years. Come on, somebody. So my oldest is about to turn 18. We'll be graduating high school together. Come on, somebody. And she is a gift from God. She leads worship at one of our campuses. She participated last week in what's called the National Fine Arts Festival, which took place in Orlando. A lot of singing, dancing, preaching, art, and things like that. She took home first place last year in the nation. This year, she took home second place, and I told her that's because they couldn't give it to you twice, because it's rigged, okay? So I'm going to write an email on the airplane heading home to the people in charge. Let them know that's rigged. I want a recount. Come on, somebody. She's incredible. Then my son, he's standing on his tippy toes in this picture. He's an aspiring basketball player. We travel all the way around. Played AAU, but I tried to convince him that the last name Santiago isn't found on the back of any jerseys in the NBA. But we're still trying our best. Can't touch net, but we're trying to touch net, you know? But he's very good, and he enjoys playing basketball. He enjoys acting like he's 6'7", even though he's 5'9". Come on, somebody. And then my daughter Harmony here, she runs the slides for me on Sunday, the PowerPoint. And I asked the team a couple weeks ago, "Hey, why did you put Harmony on the slides?" They're like, "Well, Pastor, she knows you best. She knows when you're going to go to the next point. She knows when you're going to go to the next verse." And they said, "You can't get mad at her if she messes up." I was like, "You're not wrong. You're not wrong." When they were in diapers 13 years ago, we moved to Raleigh, North Carolina to plant Focus Church from scratch. People ask me all the time, "Why didn't you go to Cartersville? Why didn't you go to Savannah? Why didn't you go to Knoxville? Why didn't you go to anywhere? You could have gone anywhere. Why did you choose Raleigh, North Carolina?" And the truth of the matter is, the lady who showed us our first apartment when we were exploring to where to move said that she wouldn't do a credit check. Come on, somebody. And because she wouldn't do a credit check, we thought that that was a sign from God. If you're not going to check our 480, then we are grateful. This must be the Lord showing us where to move. And at 24 years old, with 2 nickels to rub together, a big dream in our heart, but really no understanding of what it would take to start a church from scratch, I did what any father of 3 young children would do, and I got a job. I got a job at Panera Bread. I think they have a picture of me. This is me bussing tables at Panera Bread 13 years ago, making $7.25 an hour. It's hard to provide for a family at $7.25 an hour. So challenging financially that I asked my manager to not throw away the leftover bagels at the end of the shift, but instead to leave them next to the dumpster instead of putting them into the dumpster. And so after I would clock out from my Panera Bread shift, I'd go behind the Panera Bread, and there next to the dumpster, like a sketchy drug deal, there would be a trash bag full of bagels. I'd take that trash bag full of bagels home, and the kids would be like, "Dad, we're hungry. What's for breakfast?" And I'd say, "You're not going to believe this. Manna from heaven has arrived in the form of a trash bag full of yesterday's bagels." A couple hours later, they'd be like, "Dad, what's for lunch?" And I'd be like, "You're not going to believe this. We're having sandwiches, but the bread is yesterday's bagels from Panera." A couple hours later, they'd be like, "Dad, what's for dinner?" And I'd get really creative. I'd say, "Pizza." And they'd get all excited thinking that we were going to order fancy pizza from Papa John's or Domino's or Pizza Hut. What they didn't realize is we were going to take those bagels, smush them, put some cheese on top, and call it pizza. So we don't go to Panera Bread anymore as a family. We just stretch our hands every time we drive by. We're like, "Lord, thank you for delivering us from the hand of Pharaoh. The mighty hand of the enemy has set us free." When we were talking about where to go to lunch this afternoon after church, I said, "We can go anywhere you want except Panera Bread." And I just started inviting people to our house for a small Bible study. I didn't know, what kind of spiritual temperature we had in the people that we were meeting around town, but this was our entire church. This is the men's ministry, the women's ministry, the Royal Rangers, the Missionettes, the Awanas, the youth group, the young adults. This is the whole worship team, the whole prayer team. This is all the kids workers. This is the whole church. And we didn't even have a nice keyboard. We had a keyboard. We thought we were spiritual, but this is a Nord of the Lord right here. That was a keyboard from the flea market. We had to duct tape the power cord, make sure it didn't die in the middle of worship, and the beatbox button was broken, so we'd be in the middle of worship. "Worthy is the..." Nothing quenches the spirit quite like the beatbox button being broken on the keyboard. And we were believing that God would do something in our city. We had no idea what the Lord would do, but we knew that he had called us to it, and if he's called you to it, he will see you through it. And now, 13 years later, I'll fast forward over a ton of heartache and a ton of blessing and a ton of miracles. We are now one church in 5 locations, 9 services this morning. This is our 10 a.m. service right now. Last year, we baptized 300 people in water. Come on, to God be the glory. And no one is as surprised as I am, okay? Even my mom thinks that's AI. She thinks it's Photoshop. I'm like, "No, Mama, we really pastor that church. That's really my church." And I just want to encourage you. You're a part of something incredibly special. And you never know what being part of a local church can do, not just for your family, but for the city that you live in and the region that you are a part of. And so I am so grateful to be preaching here today. And, I come from a long line of ministers. I get a chance now to travel and to speak. About 80% of my work is spent now in other churches, kind of lifting the heads of the pastors and letting them know that they're going to make it, that the best is yet to come. And I come from a long line of preachers. Here's a generational photo. This is 4 generations in one photo. My grandfather, who carries my same name, Mike Santiago, spent 50 years on the continent of Africa as a missionary with my grandmother. My father and my mother, they raised us overseas in Southern Europe, 30 years on the mission field for the glory of God. And then my son, who you just saw an older picture of, is in this photo as well. And I've realized that God works in generations. He's a generational God. You'll find several times where God says Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Those are 3 generations. Even in the New Testament, Paul talks to Timothy and he says, "The same faith that lived in your grandmother also lived in your mother, and it lives in you. So fan into flame the gift of God that is in your life." And there are some people in here today, and you say, "Well, I don't come from a lineage of missionaries or pastors or preachers." Just because it didn't get to you doesn't mean it can't start with you. It doesn't mean you can't establish a new generational blessing. You might have inherited things that you don't want your kids to inherit. And so it's very important that you, being here today and establishing rhythms, tell yourself, it might have got to me, but it stops at me. This is really important because as you raise a family in today's culture, as you raise family in today's world, it is a dangerous place out there. How many of you know the devil seeks to steal, kill, and destroy? And if he can't stop you, he'll try to get your family. And I've learned that my greatest contribution in my life might not be something I do, but someone I raise. Like my greatest legacy might not be the house I build or the car I drive or the number of people in my church, but it might be what my children receive from me when I go to be with the Lord. And today we're talking about rhythms. Pastor's been in a series that's been 1,000,000 years long on the book of Acts. And we're concluding that time by talking about establishing rhythms. And I want to teach you how to establish generational blessing in your family. I want to teach you how to raise kids without lids, kids that have no cap on the blessing of God, but instead they inherit the riches of his glory. They inherit the goodness of God. And I know that people in here, there's already people checking out because you're empty nesters and you're like, my kids are grown and they're out of the house. This still applies to you because you don't know. Maybe grandparenting is in your future. And for those who don't want kids, you're like, no, I don't want none of them kids. I seen Target in the aisle. I've been to Costco on a Saturday. I don't want no kids. Well, you get to parent spiritually to those around your faith community in your church. We are all influencing the next generation, whether they're biological children or not. We are parents in the spirit. And then for those theologians in the room today who've already checked out because Jesus didn't have any kids, well, he was a perfect son and he had a perfect father. And so we can learn from the scriptures today how to raise kids to receive and inherit the blessing of God that results in the glory of God living in our homes, in our everyday lives. I love your pastor's emphasis on rhythms because I grew up in an era where that wasn't really talked about a lot. You came to camp, you got pushed over, they put a courtesy cloth over you, and then you went up and you went home, and that was it. But what I've learned is that if you establish generational patterns at home, the glory of God can rest in the corners of your life outside of even a church service. How many of you know God is not limited by location? That the moment that Jesus died on the cross, a veil was torn and access was given to where you and I can now come boldly before the throne room of grace, and we get access to the divine power that demolishes strongholds, and you don't have to be in a church service to receive the power and presence of God. It can happen in your F-150. Deuteronomy 4:9 as a foundational verse today. It says this, but watch out. Be careful never to forget what you yourself have seen. Do not let these memories escape from your mind as long as you live, and be sure to pass them on to your children and grandchildren. It is our job as believers to pass down the blessing of God and to rebuke the devourer of the enemy. It is our job to say we are going to establish patterns where our children are going to be better than we were. They're going to have more blessing than we had. And we are going to ensure that they live for the rest of their lives on the straight and narrow. Here's what I wrote in my notes. Kids don't need a motto to say. They need a model to follow. They don't need to repeat things with their mouths. They need to see things with their eyes. And how many of you know? They'll do what you do, and they rarely do what you say. I have 3 teenagers now, and I've been watching them, and I'm like, where did they learn that? And then I look in the mirror, and I say, oh, that's where they learned that. I've had 2 technical fouls given to me as a father of a basketball player. And I'm like, why does he have an attitude on the court? It's because his dad has an attitude in the stands. They don't need a motto to say, they need a model to follow. And they don't need perfect parents, but they do need present ones. I love what my friend Mark Batterson says. He says, I want those who know me best to respect me the most. He goes on to talk about how he wants to be famous in his own house instead of being famous outside of his house. It does us no good to have the lights and the accolades and the flowers being thrown if we walk through our door and our children despise us. If we walk through our door and there's discord in our marriage. What really matters is the home. And I want to be famous in my own home. So I want to teach you today how to raise up the next generation. A very simple sermon. I've got 11 minutes and 36 seconds left. I went way too long in the introduction. Can we just pause that clock? I'm just messing with you. Okay, there's 19 minutes. Okay, now the Lord is moving right now. I feel a prophetic spirit on that clock. It's multiplying like the fish and the loaves. It's just getting, thank God the football hasn't started yet, because I'd be in trouble at 1 o'clock. I understand. I live on the East Coast as well. 3 foundations for the next generation. How do we raise kids without lids? Number 1, kids without lids, we got to teach them to love God. My parents made sure that faith was foundational for our family. I don't know if you grew up in church, but I grew up in church, okay? I was in church 9 months before I was born, all right? I thought the baptismal tank was our jacuzzi. And while my parents spent 3 hours in the lobby after church on Communion Sunday, I just ate the body of Jesus as an appetizer. I found some bread. I was like, this must be okay. And thank God it was juice, because I washed it down with his blood. And what I've learned is that my parents' goal for my life and your goal and my goal should be our children. This is what I wrote in my notes. The goal for my children is not success, it is surrender. Like, I want my children to succeed. I want them to be brilliant. I want them to establish wealth. I want them to do great things in athletics, and I want them to do great things in education, and I want them to find the spouse of their dreams. But at the end of the day, their success comes second to their surrender. Because I don't want to work so hard to get them into Harvard that they don't get into heaven. I want to establish faith. My parents did this. They made faith central to my family. So my encouragement to you is that you would make faith central to your family. Don't outsource discipleship to their cell phone. Don't outsource their development to the public school system. But instead, you make faith central to your family. I grew up in an era where there was a book series called Left Behind. Does anybody know Left Behind? It's a rapture-based book about not making it to the rapture, and it was a great nighttime read for little kids. My mom would say, good night, sleep tight, don't let the rapture bite. I remember picking out my pajamas thinking, if God comes back tonight while I'm sleeping, I want to be in these pajamas when he returns. It's important that your faith becomes central to your family, and it starts at home. Matthew 22:37 says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. Not just on Sundays, not just when it's convenient, but every day. Deuteronomy 6:4-7, repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them. Look at this pattern. When you are at home, on the road, when you go to bed, and when you get up. This gives us practical habits right there from Deuteronomy that you can take home today and begin to apply right now. Number 1 is at home. Family dinners with intentional discipleship. We started doing this thing on Friday nights where we turn off all the lights in our house and we have a candlelight dinner as a family on Fridays. And you'd be surprised that when you diminish the amount of inputs that are allowed by screens and electricity and noise, and you simply go old school like the Amish with a candlelit dinner, conversations get deeper. Conversations get deeper. So maybe you could pick 1 or 2 nights a week where you prioritize a no phone zone and you dust off the dining room table. Maybe you use real plates for once and not the bag from Chick-fil-A that you just rip open and use as a plate. Maybe it's just my family. Maybe you reestablish at home the presence of deep, meaningful conversations about what God is speaking to your children. Maybe on the road, which is the second thing, which is listening to worship music in your vehicle. I know this is very practical. This isn't shout me down type of preaching, but what you listen to eventually shapes your thinking and your mind. Okay? My father loved Rush Limbaugh as I was growing up. And so I listened to a lot of Rush Limbaugh in the back seat of when my dad was driving. But when my mom was driving, she would turn on worship music and Adventures in Odyssey and McGee and Me. I'm aging myself now. But those were the things that we listened to, and it's so important that you can turn your truck into a house of worship. You can turn your car into a house of worship. You can turn down the talk radio and turn up the worship music. The third thing is at bedtime. Your kids need to hear you pray out loud. If you want your kids to learn how to pray, you have to show them how to pray.
So they need to hear you pray out loud, and you speak prayers of the last thing they should hear at the end of the day is blessing and favor and love and kindness and the grace of God and protection and those kind of things. The fourth thing is in the morning. I know it's tough because the older they get, the more grumpy they get in the morning. But you have to declare the goodness of God over your children. Make sure they hear the goodness of God, not, we're running late again. Why did you sleep in? All of those things happen. Trust me, I have 3 teenagers. But it's important that they hear the declarations of God. This is what I wrote in my notes. Make sure God hears about your kids from you every single day. Number 2 is this: kids without lids, they learn to love their family. Parents are responsible for making their home a haven from the world's hurt. You know what it says in Joshua 24:15, if you grew up in Sunday school like I did, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. There are 5 things that a home should be. If you're taking notes, you can write this down. If you're not taking notes, you can write this down. 5 things that a home should be. It should be a place to talk. Your kids, if they can't talk to you, they're going to talk to somebody else, and I don't want to outsource their conversations that should be happening with me with someone else. It should be a place to rest. It shouldn't be constant noise, but there should be moments of Sabbath and moments of rest in your home. The third thing is a place to laugh. Don't be so serious that they can't have a little fun. Don't be so serious that every time they talk to you, they think they're approaching the principal's office or the DMV or the Social Security office. Learn to laugh a little bit at your house. Learn to have some times of reflection, remembering the good old times and funny times. It's okay to not take yourself super seriously all the time. I hope that I'm doing my best to kind of run that balance, that in church, it's okay to smile. Did you know that? I don't know how you grew up, but you can smile in church. It's okay. The next thing is it needs to be a place to grow. Teach your kids responsibility. Give them chores. I know this is old school, but teach them that when they become of age of responsibility, they can have small jobs around the house, maybe even a small part-time job, to teach them how to interact with people. Teach them that when you shake a man's hand, you stand up and look them in the eye. Teach them yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. These are all old school things that I believe are resurfacing, and I hope to help this generation. It also needs to be a place to vent, a place to vent. They need to be able to be the most vulnerable under your care. Because if they can't be vulnerable with you, they'll be vulnerable with the wrong person. And that person will take advantage of their vulnerability and cause them to think differently than they should. Life is not remembered in minutes, it's remembered in moments. And the best gift that you can give your child is a healthy marriage. If you're married today and you're going through a struggle, may the Lord God, with all of his grace and sovereignty, bless your marriage again like it was the day you got married. Ephesians 5:25 says, husband, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church, gave himself up for her. I won't continue reading because it talks about submission, and I'm not about to get into that as a guest speaker. I'll let your pastor preach Ephesians on a different time. But the husbands, you need to love your wives. Number 3 is this, is kids without lids, they learn to love the church. They learn to love the church. The church is where I was raised. I was a part of Jumanji Church. Does anybody know Jumanji Church? It's where all the fake plants are on the stage. There's all purple pews and fake plants, and the pastor never came down from his throne. Have you seen a pastor on the throne before? He's looking down upon the congregation during the worship, making sure you're all worshiping. That's the kind of church I grew up in. I grew up in Sunday school. There's this thing called Sunday school. It was church before church. I learned on a flannel graph. Does anybody know what a flannel graph is? Before iPads, and I mean, this is before they even background checked volunteers. You know, there was no background check. You just kicked the kid out of the car and went to the basement with broken glass and barbed wire. Hope they learned something. Y'all remember those days? It made us immune to a lot of things. The flannel graph had stories of God's goodness and stories of the Bible. I learned how to preach from watching Sunday school teachers teach, and I've learned that church in my day was never optional. It wasn't even close to competing with anything else in our lives. Church was not optional when I was growing up. If the doors were open, we were there. And I've taken more naps under pews than I'd like to to count. And church was never optional. We had Sunday school, Royal Rangers, Sunday nights, Wednesday nights, Tuesday night prayer. We were shaped by habit that led to holiness. I didn't just hear my parents say they loved the church, but I watched them. I watched them give when it was inconvenient. I watched them serve faithfully. I watched them not pick up everything and go to another church, even when there was conflict or things that they didn't like. They stayed rooted in the house of God. And what it did was it produced a habit, a rhythm that established my love for the church. I love the church. I love the church. The church is the hope of the world. This is not some social gathering with some good music and a 29-minute message. This is God's plan for humanity, where the gospel gets preached, where the Spirit of God can change your life. And it's so important. So important. Hebrews 10:25 says they did not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but instead they encouraged one another. I would encourage you to make it more than you miss it. Because the more you miss it, the more you don't miss it. The more you miss, the less you miss it. And you learn to live without it. And if you learn to live without the church, my friends, can I say something a little strong? Your kid's coach won't be there when they go through a hard time in their adult years. Their travel ball team, even though it's great, they're very talented, they'll probably get a scholarship. Even in those times, my friends, they're going to need the power of the Holy Spirit. They're going to need the foundational belief of the church. I've learned that what one generation finds optional, the next finds unnecessary. So if church is optional for your family now, it will be unnecessary for your kids' families later. I know that's a strong word. I know that as a guest preacher, I'm supposed to tickle your ears and be, lollipops and roses and things like that. But it's important that you understand that Morgan Wallen didn't die for their sins. It's important that you understand that their travel baseball coach didn't die for their sins. It's important that you know, even they're so smart, their grade point average is not going to matter when they're going through a hard time in their marriage. They're going to need to know that they can go to the house of God and encounter His presence, and His presence will restore their soul. They're going to know that everywhere around this earth, there is a local expression of church, and they can find a Bible-preaching, Spirit-filled, family-friendly, Christ-centered church where they can experience the power and presence of God. It is so important because we must establish the fact that our children are going to know they should love God, love their family, and love the church. And I want the glory of God to rest upon every house. I'm on assignment today to ensure that the glory of God rests upon your house. I want the glory of His presence to be upon your house. I don't want arguments or abuse or addiction to be the reputation of your home, but instead, may the reputation of your house be the glory of God. May when their friends come over to your house, they say something's different about this house than the other house. We had some of the kids from the youth group over a couple months ago, and one of the young men in the youth group walked in, and you could just tell that something was hitting his heart. He didn't know how to articulate it, but he said, "Man, you guys are the most set apart family I've ever met." And that was the best compliment a parent could receive. Not that I preach good messages, not that I grew a big church, not that I've become the executive presbyter for ordained ministers under 40 of the General Council of the Assemblies of God, but that my house had become a house where the glory of God was resting, so much so that even a young person could tell. And I want that for you. I want the glory of God to rest on your house. We find in Scripture several times that the glory of God rests on faces. We find Moses having to hide his face in the rock because the glory of God was so strong. We find Stephen in the book of Acts when he's getting stoned. Not that kind of stoned, when rocks are being thrown at him. Okay, and you're like, I don't know what kind of church this is. When rocks are being thrown at him, it says that his face shone with the glory of God. I want the same for your life. that the glory of God would shine on your face. That when you walk into a room, they'd say, that's the glory of God. I don't know if you've seen this show. It's called Extreme Makeover Home Edition. Have you seen that show? Ty Pennington. Hey, it's Ty here. Welcome to Extreme Home Makeover. It's a great show. For kids who only use iPads, it's a classic television show. And what they do is they basically they find a family in need. Sometimes they're a community leader. Sometimes they have special needs, physical needs, where the hallways of their houses need to be widened or the bathrooms need to be redone so they can fit into the bathrooms with their wheelchair or whatnot. And they find this family, and in 1 week, they destroy these people's houses and they rebuild them. You guys seen this? You've seen the show? Okay, great. It's a great show. While they're redoing the house, they send the family to Disney World, which is awesome. And in the middle of the show, Ty, the host of the show, will be FaceTiming with the family, at Disney World. And they'll be like, hey, guys, how's Disney World doing? Is it going good? And they're like, yeah, it's great. Sally, I heard you like Elsa. Yeah, I love Elsa, Ty. Well, guess what? We've turned your new room into an igloo. It is a frozen castle. It's amazing. Let it go. It's incredible. And they really do it up for the kids. And then the next day they'll FaceTime the family at Disney World again. They'll be like, hey, little Johnny, I heard you play guitar. He's like, I love playing guitar. He's like, well, we've done your room into a guitar studio. And look, Bon Jovi is here, It's a prayer room because you're living on a prayer, We're halfway done. We're halfway there. The keyboard player can return, make me sound more spiritual. Get me off this closing illustration that will take entirely too long, but it's powerful. They finish the house, minute 26 of the show. You've been watching the family this whole time, and they do this thing where they bring the family back on a bus. You guys seen the show? Okay, I'm just making sure I'm in the right audience, We could go to an Andy Griffith if you'd like, or Matlock or something like that. Murder, She Wrote. Good old shows. They come back on this bus, and the bus is positioned in such a way that when the family gets off the bus is in between the family and the house. Now, keep in mind, we know what the family looks like. We've seen the family from the beginning. What we really want to see is the finished product of the house, because they kind of only show you in little bits and pieces during the show. And so you get to the end, and it's like a mission trip to Guatemala. Everybody's wearing the same t-shirt. All of the volunteers are there, and they start this chant, move that bus, move that bus. You guys have seen the show? Okay, just making sure you've seen this. You get to the crescendo, the crane shot is over the crowd, and Kenmore is getting some product placement, and Home Depot is getting some product placement, and all the shots are going, and they're like, move that bus, move that bus, move that bus, and then they cut to commercial. Hate that commercial break. That commercial break is of the enemy. I don't care what Subway has to offer this week. I don't care about how fast Jimmy John's is. I want to see the house. I've waited 27 minutes to see this house. Show me the house. They come back from commercial. They come back with a swooping shot off the crane. Everybody's wearing the same t-shirt. All the volunteers that worked so hard that week, and they're all chanting, move that bus, move that bus. The family gets off the bus, and move that bus, move that bus. And the family is standing between the house and the bus, and the house and the bus is there, and the family can't see the house, and they move the bus. Finally, after 27 minutes of not being able to see the house, they're gonna show me the house. It's a beautiful shot. It's amazing. And you're excited, and they're chanting. And what do the producers decide to do? What do they show? Why do they do that? I want to see the house. The show is called Extreme Home Makeover. I want to see the house. Show me the house. Why aren't you showing me the house? Cut to the house. I'm yelling at the TV. Cut to the house. What do? They zoom in on the family. The same family we've seen all show long. We already know what they look like. We don't need to see the family. Why are you showing me this family? I've already seen them. And I realized this. The producers have figured out that you don't have to see the house to see the glory of the house. Because the glory of the house is on the family's faces. And I pray that across all of this church, that the glory of God would be reflected on your faces. No matter what you're going through, no matter what trial, no matter what tribulation, no matter what sickness, no matter what disease, no matter what pain, no matter what discord, may when the camera cuts to your face, may people be able to see the glory of God that shines on your face. I don't know who I'm preaching to this morning, but may the glory of God enter into this house and become the very thing you need to get you through tomorrow, to get you through next week. May you become someone who carries the glory of God. Would you stand to your feet and just open up your hands and just ask God for the King of Glory to come in?